Welcome back to CEO Advantage podcast. I'm really thrilled to be back here with you, Millie.
Thanks for having me.
And we've got a really fabulous guest today, as we always do. But this one's a little different from anyone we've had before. This time we have Darcy Ellis. Darcy is the founder of HitFit, a fast-growing boxing fitness brand dedicated to making the transformative power of boxing accessible to everyone. A former professional boxer and the son of five-time world champion Lester Ellis, Darcy has built HitFit on the values of discipline, community, and personal growth, both in and out of the ring. And I just mentioned off camera to Millie that for those of you who know Darcy in real life and those of you who maybe haven't, when Darcy walks into the room, it fills it up with this positive energy, and we're hoping today that some of you will see some of that positive energy coming through the camera. Welcome, Darcy Ellis.
Thank you so much, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. Darcy, I ask the same question of every podcast guest at the beginning, and that is, what was the first job you had that you got paid for?
Very good question, Paul. I technically have never had a job, but
That's
we will
first.
get to that in a moment. I did do work experience, and I was usually with work experience for school. I don't think you're meant to get paid, or I think you get paid like $5 a day. I was able to hustle, I think, $20 a day. So $20 over 5 days. I made $100 for that week, and I think I was in year 7 or year 8, and I felt pretty cool. And that was at a pet shop, funny enough. There wasn't a whole lot for me to do at the pet shop at all. So I was just like walking around looking at the animals. So yeah, not technically my first job, but my first experience in the workforce. And then, from age 14 or 15, I started training kids in my backyard. We had a boxing ring in my backyard, and that's pretty much my first experience as a real job. But I was, of course, self-employed.
There you go. So we've got the only person we've come across so far that's had a cooler answer than Darcy's was Brent Riley, who said, my first job was as a professional athlete, as an AFL footballer. And we're like, yeah, that's okay.
I can't top that.
No one else has either, Darcy, but that's pretty cool. So from a 14-year-old, tell us about 14-year-old Darcy setting up a boxing training facility in his backyard. Tell us how does that happen?
Yeah, very interesting. So, as you mentioned, my dad, his name is Lester Ellis, and he was a 5-time world champion. So, post his boxing career, he was somewhat unemployable. I don't think after his boxing career, he just wasn't interested in like really working or taking a job or even being involved in media or commentating or anything that you see kind of athletes post-career dive into. So he did have a setup in our backyard where he would train people. Some days he loved it, some days not so much. So on the days where he didn't love it, he'd be like, oh, Darcy, chuck on the pads and train this kid or train this person. And me being 14 years old, probably playing video games, just running downstairs and just doing my best. I felt that it came quite natural to me. Obviously, I was surrounded by boxing my whole life. And then having the opportunity to take some of my dad's classes on the days that maybe he didn't feel like it. One thing led to another. And then like I pretty much over the course of, the next few years, relied that on my kind of sole income, more or less. I was able to support myself through my own professional endeavors as an athlete.
Yeah. So we'll come to where that's led you to and your business and some of the things you've learned along the way. I'm curious though, having a very successful dad and a well-known dad is a double-sided. It's a double-edged sword, and for lots of people, and I've worked with lots of people who've had a successful parent. It can cast a long shadow, but equally it can be the springboard for really taking it to the next level. How aware were you of how successful and famous your father was when you were little?
Yeah, very, very good question. Not so much. I think kids are pretty naive to all that stuff initially. And I think like the younger I was, the less aware I was. And obviously, as you get older and older, you become more aware and you start to have even an appreciation for everything that, obviously, in my case, my dad had to go through to reach that level of success. But initially, not so much. But it became more and more apparent to me when he would pick us up from school, and then the parents were like, "Oh my gosh, that's Lester Ellis." So I go up, shake his hand, and take a photo. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is kind of weird, but all right." And then if we went out, like, for dinner, and someone would recognize him, etc. But especially went to like boxing events. Obviously, people at a boxing event know other boxers. Then he would be like a rock star, chatting to everyone, people buying drinks or looking after us, etc. So yeah, there are moments you feel pretty special, as a kid to see, obviously, your idol and your hero. For my father, being respected in that way by other people.
Darcy, what were some of the leadership traits that you learnt from your father, or character traits that you're now utilizing today to build HitFit?
Yeah, another very, very good question. I think like just that relentless pursuit in what you want. Like boxing, I read an article the other day that it got rated like one of the hardest sports in the world, and my dad went from starting boxing at the age 12 all the way up to, I think he was in his mid 30s, 36, 37 when he had his last fight. Back then, sports science wasn't as big. So pretty much he'd be in the gym, sparring every day, getting his head beaten in and his brain shook, to the point where he has a lot of injuries post-career, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess the leadership traits that I took from him was, uh, being okay with sacrifice and having to pay the price for success in any way, shape, or form, and that relentless pursuit in going after your dreams, regardless of the circumstances.
And you mentioned, Darcy, that coming up in boxing during Lester's time is not like now. The awareness of concussions and the awareness of how to train and spar. Is that really different from your dad's day to now when you started training?
Absolutely. It is insanely different. My dad said he started boxing from age 12 and would spar on average about 5 or 6 times a week. Now, when in terms of like brain damage and things like that, usually it's done in the gym and in sparring, because you might obviously, if you're sparring 5 or 6 days a week, a training camp might go for 6 to 8 weeks. And then the fight itself, you're only having a fight once every 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months. You don't actually cop a lot of damage during the fight. It's all the punches you cop in the lead up preparing for the fight, which is why fighters have punch drunk syndrome and obviously, struggle to put their words together and suffer with dementia and things like that. So yeah, back in the day, it was a while. They just used to, their training just used to be them punching on.
Wow.
Whereas like nowadays, where boxers and athletes in general understand the repercussions of getting your brain hit. So yes, it's definitely progressed for the better, to say the least.
Being a world champion once is at 19 is amazing. But Lester then went and did it another 4 times after that. When was his last one?
His last world title, good question. I should know this. I would say it would probably be a few fights before his last fight.
Yeah.
So like a lot of fighters, a lot of athletes, obviously towards the end of their career, their performance usually slows down. But I believe he was in his early 30s when he won his last world title.
Okay. And so you've got into the family business. Tell it, and as a 14-year-old, your dad says, "Dars, come down and train these kids." So as a 14-year-old, does that mean did you know that boxing was going to be your career, or it's a bit like inheriting the family business, isn't it? You've getting into it. Did you, or was it something that you went, yeah, this really connects with me, or is it something that you was just around you so much it was you found yourself in it?
Yeah, a combination of both. As a young kid, I always was around boxing and enjoyed it. But let's say from the age of 10, I didn't think I'd go on to be a boxer. I actually loved soccer, and I played soccer for many years. And then, yeah, from about around age 13, 14, I was playing soccer and boxing. And then boxing kind of consumes your whole life, And as a young kid, being Lester's son, all the attention that you would get just made me gravitate towards, if I do this thing, probably subconsciously, a lot of people are giving me pats on the back, It was very exciting for me at that time. So yeah, from age about 13 or 14, it pretty much consumed my whole life.
It's a fair bit of pressure, is it, to be the son of a gun? The AFL footballers who've got famous famous dads' names as well. Having to is it as much pressure as people would think it is? Is it more? Is it less? How do you handle it?
Yeah, I never really struggled with that, like having my dad as a world champion. Even when I was young, I always thought of it as a positive thing. It gave me a sense of pride, like stepping into the ring and time my dad would come down and watch me spar, etc. Always wanted to perform well to impress him. So yeah, never really had a negative connotation to it. I would say, and whether we get into this now or later, the only negative connotation I had was during that transitional period from uh, being a boy and becoming a man from like 17 to 19, 17 to 20. Yeah, through that period, I struggled and I wasn't boxing during that time. But the times that I was boxing, no, I absolutely loved it. And especially once I turned professional, usually when most fighters turn professional, like it's still very humble in what you're making, etc., and your sponsorships. But the fact that my dad was who he was, I was on TV, I was getting, sponsorships, and I realized that this is only happening because of my dad, and I'm going to make hay while the sun shines, and might as well milk it for what it's worth. So for the most part, I always had a positive connotation to it.
Yeah. Darcy, can we go back there a little bit? So I feel like at age 14, you're already, showing these awesome leadership traits by teaching other kids, how to be great boxers and what that would have done to the community and your neighborhood, and that, Flow and Flat would have been amazing. But you made a little comment just then about, transitioning from boy to man. What were you doing there? And, were you thinking, I want to create my own self, my own identity. I want to study something completely different. Tell us what was going on there. And
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack in that period of my life. And I'd probably say it was my most, like, for lack of a better word, dark period, because I stopped boxing at around 16 or 17 years old before I turned professional, and I had a break for about 2 or 3 years. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life. For whatever reason, I kind of lost the, not the love for boxing, but I just wasn't as interested as pursuing it for a career at that stage in my life. And I was trying different things. And yeah, I just wasn't very motivated to do anything. And then at that point, I'm like, I'm 16, 17 years old. Like my dad at my age was almost a world champion. And like, really, what have I accomplished? Nothing. And I think at that point, again, for me being about 16 to 19 years old, I really struggled with that. And that was probably the only downside of my dad having such success at an early age, is I'd compare myself to him and feel like I was a fraction of what he was. So I didn't feel worthy. At the same time, I've grown up to realize, well, he was working towards something from the age 12 to 19. So he put 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears every single day to become a world champion at 19. But I didn't have that perspective. When I was 17, I just said, at the same age, he was a champion and I'm nothing, so I must be useless.
Have you talked to your dad about that? Have you had a conversation with your dad about that time and how you felt about that?
Not really, Paul. No,
Yeah.
I haven't. I guess my relationship with my dad, if I wanted to talk about it, like he would definitely sit down and have a chat with me. For whatever reason, during that time, I didn't. But yeah, I'm sure he would have gave me the same advice as to like, you just,
Oh,
at that time, I think, and what I've realized as well, and I'm sure he would have given me the same advice, things happen at different times for people. Like my dad had the twilight of his life at 19, and then arguably throughout the rest of his life, he didn't achieve that same level of success, and I've grown up to realize that I might not have it at 19, but it's a long life and I might get it at 70, 80, 90, who knows? I might get it next year, like whatever that is for you, like it doesn't really matter. But yeah, definitely at that transitional period from being a boy to a man, I didn't have that perspective. And again,
Man,
it made me feel quite
I,
small.
I think it's tough and this doesn't get acknowledged a lot, but I mean, it is tough for whether you're male or female, whether your parents are successful or not, whatever, that period of 15 to 19, when the frontal part of your brain hasn't finished developing, or even sometimes really developed, that part that is around identity, around consequence, around insight. But adults start, your body looks like an adult, and adults start treating you like one, but your brain doesn't function like one. It's a horrible time for lots of people, not just you, Darcy, but for lots of people. And the environment around young people while they're going through that transition becomes vital. You know, that old takes a village to raise a child. Never is it more important, I think, in that 15 to 19 bracket where, you know, expectation, you start to become aware of an expectation, but it doesn't make sense yet.
Yeah.
And you reconnected back with it, with boxing and became a pro yourself. Talk to us about, talk to us about becoming a professional boxer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, Paul, with what you've said about that period from 15 to 19. I'm not really a depressed kind of person. I believe that, we're in control of how we view life. But definitely during that period, I felt the most depressed than I ever have ever, and you have days where you think about, oh, do I even want to be here anymore? And me saying that now, I'm like, I should just slap that 15-year-old Darcy in the head. But you think that way during that time, and yeah, absolutely. I think that in the environment that you're in, and luckily for me, I had very supportive parents and had older brothers as well that were going on to pursue other things. So I'm quite grateful that I had the support that I had, but can definitely acknowledge other kids that may not have that support and end up going down the wrong path, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was during that period where I remember I got to a point, and maybe it was a few years, or maybe some periods were worse than others, but I was around 17, 18. I thought, you know what, like if I have no motivation for life, I might as well try something. And then, if it doesn't work out, like what's the worst case? And I'm just back in the same position. So excuse my language, like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to turn professional. I'm just going to start boxing, and then we'll just see what happens, And then, from having a layoff for a couple of years, I just decided to turn professional. And that kind of one thing led to another. And straight away, like once you set your focus on something and then every day you're working towards a goal, it was amazing. It was amazing how quickly I forgot about how sad or down I was in the previous years. Like literally it just switched overnight, and now I had a new lease on life and a new thing to focus on. And that put me in good stead to where I am today.
It's amazing, isn't it, what you're touching on and what Darcy's touching on. A lot of people, whether it's weight loss or career or any of those sort of different things, or even just getting to the gym or doing those sort of things, they're like, oh, when I'm motivated, I'll go and do it. And it's like, no, motivation follows action. If you're waiting to get motivated, you'll be waiting for a really long time. And I think, Darcy, that's a really good example of you just sort of going, well, I'm just going to do something.
Yeah.
And then the motivation followed the doing, as opposed to the other way around.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to realize, and one thing I realize is, just by doing it, even if you do the completely wrong thing, then it kind of, makes you transition to something else and something else. You might have to do the wrong thing 7 or 8 times before you find the right thing. But like you said, the results come in the actual doing and learning while you're doing, as opposed to just sitting there and thinking about what you should do.
I feel like there's such a power when you're in your early 20s. I experienced something similar where you just, you have this relentless type of mindset, like, okay, just gonna go for it and give it a go and see where it takes me. Like, I think there's such a cool power that I wonder if enough people in their 20s are, embracing that enough. I love that you were just like, yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people too, they get to the point where like they've had enough, or like, example, we obviously at our business deal with a lot of people for weight loss. Unfortunately, a lot of people wait not until it's too late, but until they get a really bad health scare, or until something really bad happens. Now all of a sudden they've gotten over the fear of, oh, what if I look like an idiot? The importance of their health. Oh my gosh, I had this health scare. I don't care if I look like an idiot. I have to go to the gym and I have to get it done. Sometimes I guess the universe forces you in that situation where you feel like your back's against the wall. I think it's harder if you're not in that situation to still have that same level of urgency and still walk in the door if you haven't been put in that situation. But I think as we get older and as you get ambitious, you almost force yourself to be uncomfortable. And at least for my life, as silly as it sounds, a lot of my things that I do, I feel like it's life or death, like I have to do this. Even if I didn't do it, nothing would change in my life. But I think, in a healthy way, of course, developing that mindset where it is as important as life or death definitely helps you get over the line.
I think, and with so many people that we're speaking to, and we obviously speak to a lot of CEOs where business, life, working hard, working at, hustle, working hard, health does, fall behind a bit. And get to age, 20s, like 30s, and now generally you're in 40s or 50s when you think, oh shit, like I really should have taken action sooner. So I'd love to hear more about, what you're doing now and your purpose for HitFit and some of the lives that, you're seeing that you're transforming based on, what you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty much, yeah, in terms of how my life panned out is I was obviously boxing as a professional for a few years. And then I pretty much was in another crossroad in my life because I was boxing as a professional for about 2 or 3 years. And at that point, the people around me thought, yeah, like you're on your path. You're getting a lot of attention. You're a son of a world champion. So like your future is set out for you to go on and become a boxer and obviously try to get the same success as your dad got. That was the most logical path for me based off my history. And then, yeah, into my career, nothing had happened. One day I thought, you know what? I think I like training people more than I like boxing. And I'm going to open up a gym. And everyone's like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? You know nothing of my business. Like this is going so
Really?
well. Like have a great career. You're young. And then once you retire, then open up a gym. That's what like you should be doing. You're not stopping. Like you have such a finite window to do well here. And all the stars have aligned for you. Like, why are you stopping now and doing this thing that, opening up a business that you have no experience running a business. So that for me was another identity shift. And I've gone from like boxing and like getting the attention of being a boxer to opening up a gym where, as you guys know, running a business, it's very thankless sometimes. And that was definitely a hit of reality, smack bang in my face. But in saying that, I absolutely loved it. And was definitely one of the best decisions I've made, which, yeah, today now we've got 3 locations. We're opening up a 4th, which is amazing. And every day, all my actions lead to someone changing their life through boxing, whether I'm chatting with a team member, whether I'm looking at a spreadsheet. I know pretty much the outcome of my doings every day is people changing their life in a positive way. And that for me is very motivating. And if I have to scrub toilets in order for that to happen, I'm more than happy to do that.
How cool is that? Look
It's a no can't moment.
It's a no can't moment. Exactly. Like he's told his can't, he's crazy. He shouldn't stick with what you're doing. And he's gone, no, I'm going to do my own thing.
Yes.
So he's overcome. He's told the can'ts to leave him alone.
Yeah.
Good on you, Darcy. I love it. So tell me, you started, getting into the fitness industry and is, it's very competitive. It's pretty expensive to set up, particularly set up your first one because you've not got any income, but you've got to spend some money on fit out and rent and your brand and getting all those things ready. We'll come to it in a minute, but Darcy was smarter than the average small business owner as well in so many different ways, but there's a clever way we'll come to in a minute. But tell us about opening your first HitFit. How did you come up the name? I was about to say, how did you come up with the name? Well, I don't know, boxing. But it was a crowded marketplace at that stage too, wasn't it? Boxing, this wasn't new. So tell us about stepping into that, coming up with a brand, coming up with your location, and being successful when apparently you didn't know what you were doing.
Yes, I think ignorance is bliss. Absolutely. And all that stuff, I had no idea about anything. And I look back, I'm like, oh, I've got pretty lucky with like just the way things have panned out and the decision I had made just based off gut instincts and absolutely no data ended up working out for the better. But one thing I did realize is that I did want to again, it is a crowded marketplace. And I read a statistic that I think 80% of gyms in the first 5 years end up closing down. So you have a 1 in 5 chance of just surviving. And that's not even doing well. That might be just break even. So very, very tough business. And then, yeah, at the same time, like boxing wasn't new in the fitness industry, but I did want to make sure that I guess people have a certain stigma as well towards boxing. And we wanted to be very inclusive of everyone and welcoming to people from all walks of life, which up until this point, I don't really know. Well, I do know there's not really one single boxing brand that does that successfully on scale, in my opinion. So we wanted to be the first, at least at one location. I wasn't thinking about multiple locations when I first opened. Absolutely not. And then, yeah, just kind of winged everything, to be honest. Like found a space, like, oh, I think there's a lot of people in our first location, Melton. Oh, this factory looks okay. Like, oh, yeah, I should be able to afford that. I pretty much spent my life savings in the fit out and everything that I made from boxing. And my own personal training business just to get it up off the ground. And yeah, just kind of hustled my way through and just learnt on the job. I think if I knew everything that I had to do going into it, probably would have deterred me. But the fact that I had no idea about anything, I just had like this confidence. I thought, you know what, if I can get punched in the face, and I can fight in front of people, surely I can run a business. And that mindset has worked out for me so far.
So tell us about that difference, though. So you because what you're talking about as your value proposition is somewhat of an anomaly in it's almost contradictory. So you're being inclusive, you're valuing community, you're valuing being kind to people and making them feel included in a sport that is about beating people up. So, I mean, it's a contradiction in terms. So tell us about how you've brought that together.
Yeah, absolutely. There definitely is a lot to unpack. And boxing as a sport, it's funny, like you'd see boxers fight each other and beat the living crap out of each other for 12 rounds, and they're black and blue and they're bleeding, and then they're embracing each other after in the change room just like they're best friends, and then realize for the last 30 minutes they're just killing each other, you know. There is an amazing camaraderie in boxing, especially in sports in overall, but especially in boxing. Like once you go through that experience fighting someone after, it's almost like you can't help but be their friend, you know. Now, obviously in our gyms, people aren't necessarily punching each other, but it does have that same, you know, feel and vibe, etc. And boxing is very empowering for people, and it's an experience like no other. So when you get to experience that in the same space as someone else, even though you're not boxing each other, it does create this incredible community. And especially during our classes, everyone's going through the same experience. At the end of it, we have strangers like hugging each other and fist pumping each other and like exchanging numbers after class. And that to me is like so rewarding,
Wow,
you know?
that
So
energy.
yeah, the energy, definitely.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, Paul, I don't know how it works, but it definitely does to have like, you know, a quote unquote violent sport like boxing end up building these amazing communities and these great relationships.
Oh, I can so see what you were saying about Darcy. How he just walks into a room and it's just so positive. Like if you're already setting that like from the top since, you know, day one of starting HitFit, like I can only imagine the positivity and the buzz that must be happening throughout, you know, all your gyms. And I was thinking, how many people are working for you now at HitFit?
We have approximately 35 or 36 at the
Okay.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And do they all come from strong boxing backgrounds like yourself?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. So that's another thing that I'm proud of as well. Like a lot of our coaches actually started off as members and pretty much use boxing as a vehicle to change their life. And then from that, they become coaches and then have helped kind of pay it forward to the new members in our community. So yeah, a lot of success stories of just, and that's the main reason for us to like why we exist as a company. And I say this a lot to my team is, of course, we've got great ambitions to make like HitFit the best and the greatest brand in the fitness space. But more importantly, like we need to have a mission beyond ourselves. And it's about raising the awareness of how transformative boxing is. And that's the only reason why we exist as a company. And if we can do that better than any other brand, I think we would succeed as a natural consequence. So yeah, before Team HitFit, we're Team Boxing, and boxing in one way, shape or another has transformed the lives of all the people in my team, you know? So yeah, we're Team Boxing, that's for sure.
In my 25 years as a CEO, one of the hardest things to find was a consulting and advisory firm where they'd actually been CEOs. I created CEO Advantage to be the advisory firm I was looking for. Go to ceoadvantage.com.au and find out how we can help you and your team be the best in the business.
What are some of the most life transformative stories that you've witnessed that, you know, you feel quite privileged that, you know, you've been apart since they've been with HitFit?
Yeah, there's definitely been many, but if I had to pick some of the top ones, at least from a physical transformation point of view, we've had people that have lost like 60, 70, 80 kilos at the gym and have literally, transformed their life, both physically, mentally, emotionally. So yeah, that's been incredible to see. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight, so we've known these people for 2, 3, 4 years and seen them along that journey. Usually weight loss as well isn't linear. Some people go, up and down, and they go through different periods of their life. So that will be one. And the second as well, and something that's getting more and more awareness of, is people's mental health. Like, someone may not need to go through a big physical transformation, but I've had people DM me or pull me aside at the gym like, man, I was in a very bad place, and I was thinking that I wanted to commit suicide, and I walked through your doors and it completely transformed my life. And like, on the hard days, it's funny when you get messages like this. Often it's when like you're the least motivated, or you're complaining about something, and then you just get a little moment happens, or you have an interaction with someone, and it just reminds you like, oh, that's the reason why I'm making all these sacrifices, is because that's the outcome of all the work that I'm putting in.
It's also not the what you're doing and the transformative effect of the fitness of boxing, but also the mental health of boxing, and getting the endorphins going, but also getting your aggression out and getting those different things out. It's not restricted to age either. What's the age range of the people that come and see you at HitFit?
You're exactly right. And that's another reason why we're team boxing, is because our youngest member is 3 years old and our oldest member is 91 years old.
No
And
way.
she boxes in a wheelchair. So it just, it goes to show that as long as you can extend your arms, even if you can't, like, you can still box in some way, shape or form, that it is very inclusive. And for us, like, one of our slogans is that, like, we fight for the underdogs, and I'm very inspired by Rocky, and obviously Rocky is a typical underdog story. So regardless of your background, where you come from, or your physical capabilities, like, it's better you're in the gym giving it a crack than being on the couch watching Netflix.
Yeah. Love that. What would happen if we bring boxing to the boardroom? Like, can you imagine, picture a board, all the board members, like, right, this board meeting, we are going to HitFit. Yeah. What would happen? What would come out?
Darcy, what would happen if you got a bunch of, I was just living that still. I was thinking, oh, wow, if you kicked off a board meeting.
Yeah.
With everybody having a HitFit trainer hitting the bag and whatever, and then sitting down, and then I wonder how the board meeting would go.
It's I think you'd get a lot of laughs, because especially too with boxing, it's one of them things where it becomes almost like a game, because at least for me, like, if I'm going for a run, I'm not really worried about my technique. I'm just like running because I kind of want to get fit. But for obviously people boxing, they're thinking about the combinations, they're thinking about where they're going to put their head, and they're getting tired at the same time. So it really, really focuses you to be present. If I'm going for a run, I could be thinking about work or what that person said to me. But if I'm boxing, I'm only thinking about boxing, because there's, multiple things to process. So it's one of them forms of exercise where it really forces you to be present. And then as a result of being present, it releases all them endorphins. And again, if you're going through that experience with people, you can't help but feel good after it, I'm yet to see someone do a session and then walk out crying.
I wonder that presence. I mean, you go into a board meeting and you have to be present in the board meeting. In fact, it's, if you're a CEO, and you're in the board meeting, or you're the board chair, it's really intense, and it's that, as Darcy just mentioned, it's that being present. You're listening to not only to every word that's happening, but how those words are spoken, and who's not speaking, who is speaking, looks on faces, tones of voice, matching what you've read in papers to what you're now hearing, but then also thinking about consequences. So, what am I going to do next after I've heard this thing? Or what bias have I brought to what I've read? And so the value of finding a way to be intensely present with multiple things going on is really valuable, right? So, and if boxing becomes a way of even you finding a way to be present, and then finding different ways to repeat that in your life, being present with your family or being present with your most significant person or being present in a board meeting. That state of being present is both exhausting and a lot of going on, but there's also almost a peacefulness in reaching that presence too, isn't there, Darcy, in terms of almost like a flow state of one you click into, I know what I'm doing now, and it goes to a new level, right?
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more, Paul. And it's very much, again, boxing at its purest is that when you're in there with someone, it's not about who's the fittest or who's the strongest. It really is about who has the most mental resilience. And the best boxers in the world are the smartest boxers. It doesn't mean they have the quickest punch or the strongest punch. Is they're thinking their way through. They're able to, be calm in the heat of the moment. They're reading what's going on. They could be doing something now and setting something up for 3 or 4 rounds later, which is just crazy when you think about sport, or throwing a particular punch because they want to set up another punch in 2 minutes to come, So absolutely, I agree. And as you know, whether it's a board meeting or you're dealing with team members, etc., there's so many different things that you have to process at any given time. It is nice to do something in your everyday life where you actually get to practice that and hone in on that skill. And then for us on a lower level, again, our members aren't punching on with each other, but even during a class that goes for 30 or 40 minutes, they might have to remember a 6 or 7 punch combination, which they could do it when they were fresh. Then as they start to get tired, what was that again? What was that again? It forces, them to be mentally present as they start to get tired and as they start to fatigue. And I think that is a skill that is beneficial for everyone to practice on a regular basis.
It is a really good point, that the skill of not panicking when you become tired. When you're, and again, that happens in board meetings, it happens in family life when, as a mum, you've 2 hours sleep and I've got a full day ahead of me, knowing how to not fall apart when tiredness kicks in.
Last night, hardly any sleep. I've got a 4-month-old at home, Darcy, not sleeping. But okay, I've got to do this. Yeah, not panicking is a good one.
Yeah, it's
and
really...
Paul, I might share a story of my dad. And obviously when we boxed, my dad, that's when I felt the closest to my dad, because that's where he felt like he could provide the most value, because besides boxing, he didn't really like anything else. I should say I wasn't interested in anything else. But yeah, a few times like in boxing when I was young, or even as I got older, I'd get hit, then I'd panic, or I'd get hit and then I'd get angry and try to hit the other person hard. And then as a result, I'd get hurt more. And he really taught us the importance of, like, especially if you get hit and you get hurt and you're seeing stars, or you get hit and your legs start to go, the importance of staying calm and keeping it simple. And then I'm like, well, how do you do that? Like if I get hurt, then straight away I'm trying to knock the other person out. And like you said, it is just that repetition. It's understanding that I've been here before, and then as I kind of start to progress and you get hit and you get hurt, which is kind of scary because you're seeing stars, and also the fear of losing where you might get hurt and the referee might stop the fight and then you've lost, so you have to show the referee, or you have to act like you're not hurt so you don't lose the fight. And little moments like that, just kind of blew my mind, because I've seen my dad get hit and be knocked out on his feet and then still appear like he's calm, where in his mind, no way he's calm, but he used to tell us, I've been here before, and when it happens, I'm like, you know what, it's just another day in the office, more or less, and I think to have that level of calm when shit's going on in your life, or you've been hurt, or you have 2 hours of sleep, I definitely think that is a skill. And and I'm sure, as you guys know, a lot of successful people and strong people practice that on a daily basis, where they could be having the worst day of their life and you wouldn't be able to pick it.
So much leadership lesson just in that little explanation from Darcy then around making sure you don't show it. Sometimes in leadership positions when you're running your own business or you're running a board meeting, and your mind is racing for the answer, but you don't want to look like you're racing for the answer. You've got to maintain calm, keep your heart rate down, and the answer sometimes does come to you. Those times, isn't it awful when you go, I know what the answer is, but I've got brain freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, stay calm. Well, here it comes. I can feel it coming, and giving yourself the space to find the answer. I think as well, in one of our earlier podcasts, we had Darren Fleming, and Darren Fleming talks about mindset mastery And one of the things that you touched on, and Darren did as well, that works in whether it's in leadership or life or whatever, and that is that when you get that feeling of panic, that chemical reaction, as Darcy said, if you get hit and you get hurt, or you get hit and you're angry, what Darren Fleming talked about is let that energetic sensation pass through your body before you react to it, because how you react when all that chemistry is going on, as you just said, Darcy, if you react while the chemicals are going on, you'll get hurt more and you'll lose more. And it's interesting, isn't it, that Darcy gave the same message but through a very different lens than that, but the message is the same.
Definitely. You should go back and listen to Darren's episode. I think you two have a lot of things in common. That's really, really cool to hear your perspective and approach to exactly what you're saying. Is like that's why I brought up the boardroom, because it's so much can be applied and probably needs to be applied. That you talk about that ambidextrous thinking.
Yeah.
Have you told Darcy about the ambidextrous thinking of a lot of trying to train leaders to think on both sides of the lens?
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well of the ambidexterity and ambidextrous leadership is about not just relying on what's always worked. And you talked about that as planning ahead and planning your move, but also ambidextrous leadership is around saying build on what has been working, but always be thinking about what else you could be doing that is creative or different or whatever. But you must do both. Otherwise, that's when you get blindsided, of course, is that you rely too much, you start to become too predictable, and the world changes on you and you don't see it coming. But I'm sure in boxing, that's easy to happen if you rely on your weapon too much. You start to become predictable and get a surprise, right?
Absolutely. And you do see that a lot, I guess, in sports and boxing in particular, where you might have someone that's a really big hitter and he's knocking everyone out. And then he comes across that one person that he can't knock out. And then all of a sudden you see a completely different side of him. He looks like a different boxer altogether because what was working previously hadn't worked with this opponent, So no, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
So what's interesting that you raised board, Millie, is Darcy did something that most young fellas don't do, and certainly young fellas who've just started a business and it's their first site. Darcy decided to put a board in place as a small business owner.
Wow. Okay.
And, not a particularly profitable business at that stage, but Darcy was world domination in his mind. He was a bit humble before. He said, I didn't really think of it. But I've had conversations with Darcy that his I don't know what I'm doing and I'll just concentrate on this one gym, I think lasted about 7 minutes. And then, because you put a board in place, tell us about where did you come up with the idea? Mm-hmm. How did you even start looking for a board? You didn't know about corporate governance, right? You hadn't been in lots of board meetings before. So this is a big deal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it wasn't 7 minutes, Paul. It was about 7 weeks, I reckon.
7 weeks. Yeah, all of that time.
But yeah, I remember the way that I thought of it is like a lot of things. You're on social media, you might see a click that interests you, and then you do a little bit of research, etc. There was just one individual that talks about, like, for any business owner, the importance of putting together a board and having a dream team. And then initially I thought, well, my business is too small. Like, what kind of high level person would be interested in like a one location boxing gym? And like, I felt at that time, I didn't feel like I know what I'm doing, but to my surprise is when you reach out to these people and you explain, what your vision is and what you want to do, and you're completely honest with where you are in the process, it's amazing the type of response you get from people that have a lot of experience, because obviously they didn't always have a lot of experience. And at some point they were in the exact situation as you. And I found that process, initially I was so scared to reach out to them or in a meeting. I felt like I was stuffing up my words all the time. It just made me so nervous. And then I got through that process and I thought, you know what, like, this is probably the best thing I've ever done, because I'm learning so much and now I'm in contact with these amazing people. So that's what kind of led me to it. And again, a lot of things in my life I relate back to boxing. And if you want to be a great boxer, you have to have great people in your corner. Like, yes, you're going to have to go out and do the fighting by yourself, but in between the rounds, you go back to your corner, you get advice, and you go out and you execute. So I tried to have that same mentality with the people I asked to be on the board, and I use that same analogy. And yes, it's something that they gravitated towards. And now we have an amazing board of directors that has definitely set up governance early in the company to help us grow and scale.
Yeah, wow. And what type of experience do each of the board members have that they're giving?
Yeah, so we have people with specialize in certain things. So like one for finance, one for operations, one for franchise expertise, one for fitness expertise. So we have, a pretty multifaceted team. And just been amazing to, even learn like finance and cash flows and P&Ls and balance sheets, none of which I had any experience with prior. So lots of lessons that I've learned directly from the source as well. And I can imagine the amount of time and money that I've saved learning from people that have that experience as opposed to going out and having to learn the lessons myself.
How early is too early? And sorry, Paul, you're going to say something, but I'm so glad you
please.
brought this up because this is really good. How early is too early? Like, Darcy, you were thinking, this is too small, too early. Would you recommend all small businesses to have this mindset that Darcy has, or?
I would recommend they all have Darcy's mindset. Darcy's got a growth mindset that's and a curious mindset that says, what's the fastest way for me to learn these things? Why don't I learn from the best?
Yeah.
And then seek out what the best is in each of those things. So it's never too early to adopt that mindset, and I don't think you should ever stop that mindset. The craft of management and leadership. And we had a podcast earlier today with Kevin McCarthy, and he is talking about the learning leader and that leadership is a craft and it's an art. So it's never too early. The second part of your question, though, was about should every small business think like Darcy around having a board? And the answer to that, quite honestly, is no. Because a board, if your plan was to run a single boxing gym as a small business, a board is overkill. It's too much admin. It would be actually a barrier to the success of your small business. However, if your idea is to scale your business and to have that business reach beyond your own capability, as Darcy's vision for his organisation was, then it's perfect. But if you don't have a vision for it and a purpose for it growing beyond being a small business, then a board is not the right answer. Would you agree with that, Darcy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, you wouldn't attract the level of talent you would want on a board if the ultimate goal was just one gym. There's nothing wrong with having a goal of just one gym, but you can still, I guess, learn from people by having advisors or consultants, etc. You can still get the information directly from the source without obviously going through all the headache of setting up a board of directors. So no, absolutely.
One of the things, though, that Darcy just touched on, and I think some small business owners can get a bit intimidated by people who've run larger organisations or, that they don't know, is to not underestimate the generosity of often very successful people have become successful because they have that growth mindset and they have a generous mindset. Now, not everyone does, and not everyone has good value programming around that. But Darcy, I know it's been your experience, and it's often been my experience that very successful people are also very generous people in terms of their time and their advice and their willingness just to help you.
Absolutely. And one person I didn't mention on my board, Robin. So she's actually head of human resources. And she put me in touch with Paul, funny enough. And obviously Paul is someone that I idolize and respect.
Oh.
And Paul was nice enough to have a Zoom call with me when he was in Melbourne. We caught up for dinner. And he's obviously a prime example of exactly what he's saying. So absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned Rob there. I noticed that you missed out the people part, and then so you've got that one back in there. We
Probably
both
one of the
remember
most
you, Rob.
important things of my organization. So yeah, Rob, if you're listening.
Yeah, she will be, I'm sure. We both remembered that, Rob. So
Speaking of the people, like I feel like, the beauty about starting a business and growing it is, you get to set the rules on who you want to attract very early on, like who those people look like. What do the people look like at HitFit? Are they, what type of people are you wanting to attract, and how can you maybe, CEOs who are listening with hundreds and thousands of employees, what can they learn from Darcy with 30 employees?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'll have a lot of value to provide to them individuals.
you
I'm
do.
slowly working my
will.
way
I
up.
think you
Definitely will,
do.
I think. Yeah.
It's certainly been important for me to, for us is about creating an atmosphere for our members. They walk in, they feel welcome, they feel a part of our community. And I know leadership starts from the top. So if I've got a toxic staff culture, I know that's going to, come down to my members. So first and foremost is to make sure that we live and breathe what we preach. And that starts with our team. I'd say like when we first started out, not a lot of people even had previous experience in a boxing gym or in a fitness space. They've just been like the right type of people with the right type of personality. And I thought if you've got the right personality and the right mindset, even if your skill is at a 2 out of 10, I'm confident enough that I'll be able to give you the skills, but you just need to have, the right values, and obviously that's probably not a sustainable long-term approach because you can't do that with everyone on scale. But that was certainly my mindset at the beginning. And yeah, it's paid off dividends, and then obviously as you attract new talent, as you attract talent that do have prior skills and, that are a higher level talent, the main thing for me is I'd rather get someone that's not as skilled, but has their values align with us first and foremost. And that for me, and I have made this mistake, over the years, and someone that's insanely talented, but the values didn't quite align. Oh, you know what, it'll be all right, or it'll be fine. Like they'll just get it at some point. It's always ended up for the worst, So that's it. One lesson. If I had to share a lesson, that would be it.
What a great! I mean, it's a brilliant lesson. It's Darcy. It's the reminder that in the scenario that you set up, CEO, thousands of employees, really big. This reminder that of Darcy applies for anybody running a business. But the bigger the business gets, you can sometimes forget it, and that is that really good people who are motivated to do the right thing can deliver really great results. Really great plans, really great spreadsheets, really great Gantt charts don't deliver anything. Humans deliver stuff. So you can have 10 out of 10 plans and 3 out of 10 folks doing it, and I can guarantee it'll fail. But you have a 3 out of 10 plan with 10 out of 10 folks implementing it, and it'll probably work. It might not look like the vision as it started out, but it'll work anyway. And that it's just brilliant, isn't it? And an A grade team with a B grade plan. Now, not everybody would agree with that, but I think good humans deliver great results. So starting off with good humans is
I love that.
It's the key.
Yeah. And, going back to what you were saying earlier, what your dad taught you is hard work beats talent. Like, I love that. That sounds like it's also a big part of your recruiting process and, what you look for, that it's not just about the skills. It's about, the hard work that they put in. But speaking of hard work, do you find, and there's a bit of talk going on around, especially the Gen Zs, and they have this, 9 to 5 clock off mentality and don't so much have that hard work hustling that, I think, Darcy, we're in the same, the millennials and plus have this hard work. Are you finding anyone, have you got any Gen Zs in your group that, you're probably needing to encourage a little bit more of the hard work, or you don't want them burning out? What is it?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts around this topic. I don't think people are lazy. I think they're just uninspired. And I mean, if you just can't wait to get home from whatever it is that you're doing for work, then clearly like it's not the thing that enriches your soul. Not to say that you should quit tomorrow, but again, going back to boxing and the lesson that I learned from my dad, he said, you can always tell a good boxer, the trainer has to tell him to relax and tell him to take a day off, because all he wants to do is just train to the point where it actually could be to his detriment if he's overtraining. So it's like the good fighters, the trainers always have to pull them up and tell them to take it easier, because all they want to do is go. And he goes, on the flip side, the average fighter is a trainer constantly has to push them and tell them to work harder or get up to go for a run. He's like, them type of boxers typically never reach the same level of success. So, thankfully for me, we do have a lot of young people in our team. I'll give a shout out to one of our team members, Bray, who actually started with us at 17 years old. He used to wake up in the morning at 4 a.m., do our morning classes from 4 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., go to school, sit SACs and exams, come back at 4, and then finish at 9 p.m. that night, and do that on repeat at being 17 years old, and he's kept that, same motivation all the way through, because he was inspired and he loves it, to the point where I'm telling him to take a day off. I'm telling him to relax, but all he wants to do is go, So I think, I'm not finding that, thankfully, in my team, because at least at this stage, everyone is really inspired and they can see the future in what they're doing, and the fact that they can achieve their dream within HitFit's dream or within my dream, to me, is like the most rewarding thing in the world. But I would say for someone that is experiencing that, or just can't wait to clock off, I can't wait to go home and do something completely different, they're just uninspired. And hopefully they have the courage to keep trying things, to find that thing that they're actually inspired about, where it doesn't feel like quote unquote work.
And probably up to you to be able to make sure you're communicating that vision, just so they're really aware about that, they're part of it together and they know what that vision is, which talked about a lot of the vision.
Well, he takes that responsibility seriously. How many times have we heard Darcy talk about his vision and communicating a vision and having a vision? And I mean, it really is the duty and obligation of the leader of any, whether it's an organisation or a community group or anything, to have your vision, share the vision, articulate the vision, but also give the people around you permission to interpret it their way. And Darcy takes that really seriously. You said it from the start, but what a great line. People aren't lazy, they're uninspired. It's like, oh my goodness. That's
good one.
Really, really fantastic. Darcy, what I'd love to know what comes next for HitFit. You've gone from 1, you set up a board at 1, now you've got 4. Where is it? 400? Is it where does this go now?
Yeah. It's definitely been weird, the fact that even when I'm driving, we've got one here, we've got one there. And I remember when it was just one, and now we have, multiple. But at the same time, it's equally rewarding, and I love every second of it. And yeah, to your point now, Paul, now that we're franchising, it's allowed us to have people live out their dreams within our dream of HitFit, and the fact that they can become a HitFit franchisee, own their own business, build a business that they love, do something that they love every day, has really become, I guess, an important thing to me, to be able to find the people that obviously do share our values, but to be able to provide that opportunity for people and see them do extremely well and obviously change their life, is just incredible, So that's a big part of my personal mission. As far as number of locations and things like that, I guess typically with franchises, the goal is to grow fast and get as many as you can. And, that's kind of the model that you see on scale. We're quite lucky that even our company owned locations do exceptionally well, touch wood. So we're not trying to grow unresponsibly and just get these things open. I kind of want to take my time with it, whether that's a few a year, and just make sure that our franchisees are successful. That's my first, second, and third priority. And obviously they're delivering a great experience to our members and customers. And yeah, I'm just going to take it a couple locations at a time at this stage. And I'm definitely in it for the long run. I have no intention to just, roll up a company or, expand and then sell and have a great exit and then just, fly off into the sunset. I can see myself working until I'm old, whether it's this or another business. So whether it takes me, 10, 20, 30 years, I'd rather take my time and grow slowly than try to take it to the moon in 5 years.
There's so much for listeners to take from listening to Darcy Ellis. and the wisdom on young shoulders is quite remarkable, isn't it? To listen to. But the key themes are in this passion he's talking about is clients all the time. He's talking about people having a good experience all the time in everything he's doing. There's that theme of, and if we think back to the beginning of the podcast, Darcy said, and if I have to clean toilets to do that, so that connection with humility and the service mindset. If we go back to the podcast we did with Adam Kosh, he talked about how powerful the service mindset is. So not only having an open mindset and a curious mindset, but a service mindset. There's lots of studies now around service leadership and books about service leadership. But I think listening to Darcy today, you can see what service leadership looks and sounds like.
Yeah, I was going to say, Paul, that's definitely served me well, and I think when you do start a business, you question like what type of boss you should be, or if you should be hard on people, or if you should be empathetic. And I think at a certain point, you do need a bit of a blend of both. But yeah, I think for me, it's like, well, I work for everyone, like I work for my employees, I work for my members. Now we have franchisees, I effectively work for them, So I think, yeah, having that service mindset and being able to provide value, is to me has paid back dividends. Maybe someone might have a different experience, but all the times I've done things through that lens, it's always in some way, shape, or form have benefited me in some way, and help get closer to my goals. Of course, you do that for the wrong person and you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or sometimes that can deter you, when you have a service mindset and you feel like it just backfired in your face. But on scale, I wouldn't change it for the world.
There's that old saying, Darcy, no good deed goes unpunished. But, every now and then I stubbornly refuse to, my phrase is to remain a thick-skinned optimist. I refuse to let people who are not good people scrub off my optimism. I'm not going to give it to them. So
yeah, and I think if I could touch on that, Paul, one, I guess, piece of advice that I could give to someone, starting out is that I think, like, especially doing anything once you're starting out, you might have to do that for 5, 10, 15 people and be okay with it not working out, or be okay with, for lack of a better word, getting taken advantage of. Because if you do it for the right person, it always, like, one good person will outweigh 10 bad people, and I think when you're starting out, no one wants to do you any favors. You're unproven. So like, why would someone go out of their way to help you? You often have to help people first, but you just have to build that one great relationship. And then all of a sudden, all the bad ones make sense. And I think if you're able to do that when you're starting out, not be deterred, and, oh, this person burnt me, now I'm never going to trust anyone ever again. That's such a negative mindset. I feel it's like, okay, like if you got burnt by a person, then your radar for selecting good people is just not good right now. So you're going to have to keep doing it until eventually your radar of selecting good people will get better. And, you can just have that approach, and instead of blaming them, blame yourself, because if you were more skillful, you could have been able to identify that early on. So yeah, that would be my one piece of advice, and something I have to practice on a daily, because we're all human beings, and sometimes you get upset with people or feel like you get taken advantage of, and you have to bite your tongue sometimes and take a night to sleep on it. And especially now as my organization is getting bigger, I'm finding I'm feeling them feelings more and more often, of like being short fused or feeling angry or being emotional, where you just have to take a breath and just move forward.
yeah, let the energetic sensation pass through your bodies.
Yes, I've been thinking of that for sure.
Excellent. Darcy, I've got a couple more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
One is, what advice would successful HitFit mega business owner Darcy Ellis, what advice would he give 17-year-old Darcy now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing question. I think just go for it. I mean, when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know. So like, yes, obviously I'd recommend being prepared and doing the necessary research, but at a certain point, like, you just have to do the thing. Once you do the thing, you're going to learn. You're probably going to do it crap to begin with, and understand it's going to be crap if it's your first time doing it. Like the first time you drive a car, it's never pretty, but just keep doing the thing. That would be my my only piece of advice.
Millie, that's kind of how you started your business, isn't it? Just how to have a go.
Just No idea. A little bit like you, no idea what I was doing. Just went for it and
You didn't even bother charging to start with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We gave a lot of things out for free, but anyway, other story.
Well, that's that service mindset, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
create the value first, and the business follows the value.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is so important. Darcy, you've had a bad day. You've been ripped off by somebody. You're in a pretty bad mood, and you're driving home. And no matter how bad your day was and how mad you are, a song comes on the radio that just makes you smile. Even when you don't want to smile, it makes you smile. What's the song?
Yeah, very, very good question. I don't know if this song makes me smile, but one thing that makes me feel better is it's a bit cliche, but hearing the Rocky song, That's the one where it's like, like, I'm a fighter, I'm going to get through these. And then also again, I've mentioned my dad a few times in this podcast, but like a bad day for my dad would be getting his nose broken, getting his eye busted, being knocked out, seeing stars. And a bad day for me is a phone call or an email or someone made me feel a bit upset. So even again, the tiger, I like to feel like I'm a fighter, I'm going to get through it. And then having the perspective of, like my dad had it pretty tough, what he had to do to give me this platform. My day isn't going that bad, like I'm still okay. My nose isn't broken. I don't have a concussion. Like, I can probably suck it up. So yeah, that and Eye of the Tiger work hand in hand, I guess.
That's gold. Is that just brilliant? Darcy Ellis, it's been fantastic having you on the CEO Advantage podcast. Thank you so much, and so much great advice. Keep going, and I'd love to check back in with you in a year's time and just see how much bigger and more successful HitFit is. You deserve it.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you as well, Millie. And one thing I would like to mention as well, in our chats, Paul, when we first caught up, I think we did it over Zoom and a meeting just like this. You said one thing to me that definitely helped change my mindset, and that was about the importance of prioritizing and only focusing on a few key things. You taught me about cognitive overload and how no matter how insignificant or significant the tasks were, if there was too many things going on and you didn't prioritize, how easy you can get stressed out. And I think at that point, I was very, very stressed out and very not burnt out, but just like, you always feel like you're scrambling. And then once you taught me that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then literally from that point, it's something that I practice on the daily. So you definitely changed my life, mate. That's for sure. And now I'm on your podcast is incredible, so thank you so much.
Mate, that's made my day. That's so good. Thank you, Darcy. That's very kind of you to say that.
No, my absolute pleasure. Thank you again, guys, for having me. And
no worries.
Up soon.
Thanks so much, Darcy. Can't wait. Can you bring a HitFit to Adelaide?
Absolutely.
Last question.
Man,
fantastic.
That's the plan. One day, absolutely.
You're the best. That's excellent. We'll catch up with you soon, Darcy.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.